I want to see how many pages it has.
Alright, start from the beginning.
Look at all these books. 207
Start from the
pages.
beginning, you'll get there. What's the name of the book?
BFG.
Okay.
It starts on page 13.
Alright,
Because
go
all-
ahead.
Because all this, it talks...
Alright, go ahead.
No, it starts on here.
The Witching Hour.
The witching hour. Sophia couldn't sleep. A brilliant moonbeam was
Slanting.
slanting through a gap in the current. It was shining bright onto her pillow. The other children in the
Dormitory.
dormitory,
Dormitory is
like a school.
like a hotel at the school, yeah.
Oh, for sick kids.
No. Go ahead.
Had been asleep for hours. Sophia closed her eyes and
Sophie. Sophie closed her eyes and lay quite still.
where? Oh. Sophie closed her eyes and lay
Quite still.
quite still. She tried very hard to doze off. It was no good. The moonbeam was like a silver blade slicing through the room onto her face. The house was
Absolutely.
absolutely silent. No voices came up from the downstairs. There were no footsteps on the floor above either. The window behind the current was wide open, but nobody was walking on the pavement outside. No cars went by on the street. No tying,
Not the tiniest.
not the tiniest sound could be heard anywhere. Sophia had never known such a silence.
Very good.
I've learned some of these words
You
from
sure
Minecraft.
have. You sure have.
This is nothing. Perhaps, she told herself, this was what they called the witching hour. The witching hour, somebody had once whispered to
Once
her to her, what was a special moment in the middle of the night when every child and every grown-up was in a deep, deep sleep, and all the dark things came out from hiding and had the world to themselves. The moonbeam was brighter than ever. So on Sophie's pillow, she decided to get out of bed and close the gap in the current. You got punished if you were caught out of the bed after lights out, even if you said you had to go to the lavatory.
You know, lavatory is a fancy word for bathroom.
I thought you were gonna say a fancy word for a cafeteria because it sounds like that, like cafeteria.
It does.
I lost it. Like that. That was not accepted as an excuse, and they punished you just the same. But there was no one about. Now Sophia was sure of that. She reached out for her glasses that lay on the chair beside her bed. They had steel rims and very thick lenses, and she could hardly see a thing without them. She put them on, then she slipped out of bed and tiptoed over to the window. When she reached the current, Sophia
Hesitated.
She longed to duck underneath them, and they leaned out of the window to see what the world looked like now that the witching hour was at hand. She listened again. It was deathly still. The longing to look out became so strong she couldn't
Resist.
And quickly, she ducked under the currents and leaned out of the window. In the silvery moonlight, the village street she knew so seemed completely different. The houses looked bent.
Next.
I only know like a lot of
And
words.
crooked.
This I don't have to redo it.
Just read. The houses looked bent and crooked.
I already read that. And crooked. Like houses in a fairy tale. Everything was pale and ghostly and milky white. Across the wait. Oh, let me read the top again because I forgot to take a breath.
Okay.
And crooked. Like houses in a fairy tale, everything was pale and ghostly and the milky white. You're supposed to take a breath when
Go
you're
ahead.
done.
Stop. Concentrate.
Across the road, she could see Mrs. Grant's shop didn't look real. There was something
Where you bought buttons.
where you brought buttons and wool and bits of
Elastic.
It didn't look real. There was something dim and misty about that too. Sophie allowed her eye to travel further and further down the street. Suddenly, she froze. There was something coming up the street on the opposite side. It was looking black.
It was something black.
It was something black, something tall and black, something very tall and very black and very thin.
Very good. You're half done.
It's the giant.
You're half done.
This is the first
Chapter 2. Who?
Where? Where does it say that?
It's chapter 2.
It wasn't a human. It couldn't be. It was 4 times as tall as the tallest human. It was so tall, its head was higher than the upstairs windows of the houses. So Sophie opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Her throat, like her whole body, was frozen with fright. This was the witching hour, all right. The tall black figure was coming her way. It was keeping very close to the houses across the street, hiding in the shadowy places where there was no moonlight on and on. It came nearer and nearer, but it was moving in spurts. It would stop, then it would move on. Then it would stop again. But what on earth was it doing? So Sophie could see now what it was up to. It was stopping in front of each house. It would stop and peer into the upstairs window of each house in the street. It actually had to bend down to peer into the upstairs windows. That's how tall it was. It would stop and peer in. Then it would slide on to the next house and stop again and peer in, and so on all. It was much closer now, and Sophie could see it more clearly. Looking at it carefully, she decided to have
It had to be
some kind of person. Obviously, it was not a human, but it was definitely a person, a giant person. Perhaps Sophie stared hard across the misty moonlit street. The giant. If that's what he was. Was wearing a long black cloak.
The coat.
I know. In one hand, he was holding what looked like a very long, thin trumpet. In the other hand, he held a large suitcase. The giant had stopped now right in front of Mr. and Mrs. Gucci's house. Gucci's house. The Gucci's had a greengrocer's shop. greengrocer shop in the middle of the high street, and the family lived above the shop. The two
Gucci.
Gucci children slept in the upstairs front room. Sophie knew that the giant was peering through the window into the room where Michael and Jane Gucci were sleeping from across the street. Sophie watched and held her breath.
Good. Almost done.
I know. My breath was in
Go
my
ahead.
stomach stuck. This is the last page.
Just keep going.
She saw the giant step back a pace and put the suitcase down on the pavement. He bent over and opened the suitcase. He took something out of it. It looked like a glass jar, one of those
Square one.
with a screw top. He unscrewed the top of the jar and poured what was in it into the end of the long trumpet thing. Sophie watched,
Trembling and shaking.
She saw the giant straighten up again, and she saw him poke the trumpet in through the open upstairs window of the room where the Gucci children were sleeping. She saw the giant take a deep breath, and woof, he blew through the trumpet.
Next.
Trumpet. Get it?
Go ahead. See you later.
What's this?
That's it.
Oh, yeah.
Come on, finish up.
Is it the last one?
Yep.
No noise came out, but it was obviously to Sophie that whatever had been in the jar had now been blown through the trumpet into the Gucci's children's bedroom. What could it be? As the giant
Withdrew.
the trumpet from the window and bent down to pick up the suitcase, he happened to turn his head and glanced across the street in the moonlight. Sophie caught a glimpse of an enormous, long, pale, wrinkly face with the most enormous ears. The nose was as sharp
The nose.
as a knife, and above the nose there were two bright, flashing eyes, and the eyes were staring straight at Sophie. There was a fierce and devilish look about them. Sophie gave a yelp and pulled back from the window. She flew across
The dormitory.
dormitory
That's it.
and jumped into her bed and hid under a blanket. And there she crouched still as a mouse and tingling all over.
That's
Done.
it. Chapter 2 is done.